Well, welcome everybody to the American Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette. We're so glad you're joining us today to stay curious on this November 10th, 2023, with Marty Winkle, my co producer. Thank you for showing up today, Marty. He wasn't sure he's going to make it, but what a trooper he is. 925 or 930 episodes. But Marty, we've been doing this almost 3.5 years, and very grateful that you always here to help us when possible. So thanks a lot, buddy. We got a great show for you today. We're going to honor some of our military astronauts. It's a Veterans Day on Saturday, November 11th. We're going to talk about a few of them. Like I said, some people that are in the military. So if we don't give a shout out to your favorite astronaut, message me and we'll make sure they're on next year. But we got a very, very important mission for the Apollo moon landing. It was launched in 1966 on the 11th of November, which is technically tomorrow. We're going to honor that. We're going to look at the first operational shuttle flight and one of the shuttles of November. I talked to a shuttle November astronaut today, Marty Charlie Walker, was out there at the Space Center. 61B or something like that was his November mission. And Charlie's looking good out there. Marty, we got a lot going on this weekend. I got one question though, Marty. Who are you? Who is this guy right there, huh? Who is that? Anybody know out there who that is right there, and why this is a pretty famous picture? I know Dave Stange knows, and you can't, Doug Forrest out there, you can't pull the wool over his eyes either. But so stay tuned. We're going to talk about who are you right there, looking through that visor shot. And then stick around to the end. We're going to show some of my favorite pictures of the late Frank Borman, who we learned died at age 95. Didn't see anything to do with his services yet. I'm sure he'll be interned, Marty, out at Arlington Cemetery. He was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, Mr. Frank Borman. And that fact gets him a little notoriety on one of the most famous rock and roll albums ever. All right, so stay curious about that. Of course, there we are, Veterans Day, all those who served. And Marty, you're one of those, a proud Marine, hoorah. We'll talk about that in a minute. Of course, our space memorabilia show is tomorrow. That's why I'm about to burst in combustion. But we're having a good time. We've got some people coming, having a good time putting it together. Because of the autograph session events we have last week, maybe we've not done all the media that we could do. But if you're in the area, please show up after your Veterans Day events at some of the local places here. Are usually over by noon, so you can come in the afternoon and buy some space swag or get something appraised. We haven't pushed the appraisal part of this, but Ken Havicott is there to help appraise some of your space memorabilia, or if you got a big collection, he'll set that up for you. Thank you for Computers for Education for helping us. Bid Again Auctions in the Museums of Brevard, all helping sponsor this. But it's basically Ken Havicott and his space memorabilia that is the main sponsor. And we had somebody get a table today. Jean Wright, as you all know, the Sew Sister is her nickname. She was a seamstress for the shuttle program, the tile, and all those blankets. That's what surprised me, was you saw these quilts on Atlantis when I first saw it, and she sewed those. And she's got a cute little book about her life. It's cute because it's a kid's book written by another lady, and Jean will be there to autograph her book. Thank you so much, Jean. And her husband, Ken Kramer, that a lot of us know, of course. Ken and Jean have been on the show many times, and we'll look forward to having Jean back and talk about her book when she wants to. So memorabilia show this weekend. It's going to, like I said, the easy to find on A1A, wonderful partners, the Beachside Hotel, and I will be going over to the ocean about 4 o'clock when that thing ends, Marty, and jumping in, probably. Well, at least getting my feet in the sand. I do like grounding myself out there at the beaches around here. Well, let's look just briefly at the astronauts in the military. Here's some simple graph. 60 is the big bar across there. And Marty, thank you for researching for us that astronauts as of June this year, NASA astronauts totaled 375 of the 606 humans who orbited the Earth. 375 of them are NASA astronauts. 216 served in the military. So that's about a third. Yeah, right about a third, Marty. 3 times 15 is 45. So just a little under a third. I'd say 31.5% if I had to wager on it. Did not serve in the military. All right. 2/3 is what I'm trying to say did serve. So, of course, that is because our earliest astronauts came from military because we wanted test pilots experienced and those that were willing to face dangerous situations. So we're going to look at a few of them up close here. Sure, you'll recognize just about everybody here. Maybe not the little boy there at the bottom there, one of our friends, Bruce Melnick. But yes, Alan Shepard was out of the Navy, the first American and second person ever to travel to space, and the fifth person to walk on the moon. He was a rear admiral in the Navy, and he served in World War II. And, I know the Navy people love dressing up. All the military love dressing up. But when you're an admiral in that white, which he's not in there, you look pretty sharp. John Glenn, another Mercury astronaut who's passed away a while ago, the first American to orbit the Earth, of course, was a Marine pilot who served in World War II and the Korean War. In the Korean War, he was wingman, Marty, in his F-8 Sabre, with who I really consider the greatest baseball player of all time, was his wingman. Would you care to guess who that might be, Marty?
I know who that is. You want me to say so?
Well, he's not a Yankee. That's right. You're not going to call him the greatest baseball player. Yeah, tell me who the Boston Red Sox was.
Ted Williams.
Yeah, Ted Williams. And can you believe that? When I first read that in a book or something, you're like, really? John Glenn and Ted Williams were wingmen for each other? That's incredible. Got a comment, question, Marty?
Yeah, comment. In honor of John Glenn and Ted Williams, today is the 248th birthday of the Marine Corps. So, hoorah!
Hoorah! All right. Well, we will agree with that here. Who did somebody? Are you telling me that?
Yes,
Oh,
I am.
Well, thank you, Marty. And we will not only give a shout out to John Glenn, but in a few minutes, about 25 other Marine astronauts. Neil Armstrong, of course, was a civilian technically when he set foot on the moon, but he was in the Navy before. Had a Navy pilot in the Korean War, and those skills got him to be an X-15 pilot as a civilian working for NASA. And then we've got on the far left, Guy Bluford, the first African American in space, was a colonel in the Air Force during the Vietnam War, Marty. He's a contemporary of yours. You never heard that Guy Bluford was in any of those units or anything you were in over there, did you?
No.
Oh, okay. Born in Philadelphia, Penn State, graduate, 80 years old. He was at Williams Air Force Base, 4 flights to space, 29 days in space from 1983 to 1992. I think people forget that Guy Bluford was really a very important astronaut for 10 years. Important being he had 4 missions. He wasn't just the first African American in space. That's immaterial to this man who had almost 30 days in space in the early days of the shuttle era from 83 to 92. And then Susan Helms. Boy, would I love to meet Susan Helms, Marty. She is 21 days in space on 5 different missions. Seems like she should have more days in space with 5 space shuttle missions. Maybe 2 of them were quick 10-day up and back. But she does set the record for the longest spacewalk by a female, almost 9 hours, when she and Jim Voss conducted an 8-hour, 56-minute spacewalk on ISS Expedition 2. And this is what I think is cool is the second expedition to space. We're talking about Expedition 1 with Bill Shepard up there, Krikalev, and Konenko. And 23 years ago, right now, that was happening. And nobody has left the space station unoccupied since. She was the first woman in the second crew to go up there. So you know she had to have it on the ball to be entrusted with the second, with two other men up there. So love to meet her. Bruce Melnick right there. Bruce, the first Coast Guard astronaut, 20 years in the Coast Guard, a rank of commander. Marty, he is a helicopter expert. The development of the Dolphin helicopter, including sea trials, and he wrote the manual for the HH-65 Dolphins, what it is. So he's also a huge Dolphin fan, Miami Dolphin fan. Though he was born in New York City, he really grew up over there on the west coast of Florida, up in the, I think he's up in the kind of the Sarasota, north of that area up there. But 2 flights, 49, and then the maiden flight of Endeavour, that had to be cool to do that. He became Boeing vice president and helped form United Space Alliance with, well, I've heard the story many times. Bruce and astronauts Jim Adamson and Mike McCulley have told me, all three of them. They didn't tell me what the name of the scotch was, but there was some scotch involved. Was they supposedly wrote out the United Space Alliance management philosophy and all that on the back of some bar napkins, Marty. We'll get Bruce in to tell that story. Well, we've got 3 Army guys. Can't leave the Army out. All right. Army people. That's Colonel Andrew Morgan on the right, the Medical Corps. He's been on 2 expeditions and 7 spacewalks. Anne McLean has been on Expedition 59 and 58, 2 spacewalks. She is a helicopter pilot. And then Frank Rubio, who just completed the longest American mission in space, like 364 days, a year in space there, medical officer, combat veteran, and of course all of them West Point graduates. So a shout out to the West Point Academy there for those astronauts. And Marty, did you think I'd forget about you? Of course not. Hoorah! To my favorite Marine, Marty Winkle, founded in 1745. That makes it about 245 years old. You're going to quibble with that because it has 2 dates. This is the date for the Continental Congress established, the Continental Marines. What are you going to say?
1775.
Yes.
Sorry, he said 17.
Well, I can correct that. That's immaterial. The 45, 10 years earlier, there was a Marines, but the Continental Congress established it in 1775. So I may have done my math. Anyway, a long time ago, almost 300, 250 years ago, the Marines were formed for the purpose of added security for the Continental Navy. And in 1798, Congress ordered reestablishment of the Marines. They were disbanded following the war due to financial constraints, Marty, and then re-upped and all that. But here are some great Marine astronauts there. If your favorite one isn't there, we'll put them on next year. But you've heard the words Semper Fidelis or Semper Fi, which is the Marines' motto for always faithful in Latin. And Marty, did you use fortitudine? Like fortitude, fortitude, meaning with courage, and per mar per terram, by sea and by land. I didn't know this. It is the smallest armed services of the Defense Department. Maybe the Space Force could be smaller than that, Marty. What do you think? Roughly 190 active duty per personnel. So, URA, where did URA come from? Well, it depends on who you ask. The origins, they believe, Marty, if you've got a story on this that you want to tell, you can tell it.
No,
They-
my story is that UROC came about after I left the Marine Corps.
Okay. And they were really going Aruga. Aruga became the Marine uh, cry for a motivational tour during physical training. Aruga became too much of a mouthful and eventually molded itself in the familiar oorah, according to Major General Gary Mart, a retired Marine. Uh, well, oorah is just one of the things that separates the Marines from any other branch of service. And you know, they are some. Oh, I had a little thing there. What did they originally introduced three primary areas of responsibility for the U.S. Marine Corps were again denoted in the National Security Act of 1947. One, seize or defend advanced naval bases and other land operations that support naval campaigns. Two, develop tactics, techniques, and equipment used by amphibious landing forces in coordination with the Army and Air Force. And three, of course, whatever the president says for you to do is the third one there, Marty. Whatever the president or Defense Department may direct. And that's all about the Marines here on Veterans Day. So, hoorah to that. Anything to add, Marty? Thanks, buddy. All right, there. Well, here is I was looking at this today when I went out to see Charlie Walker at the engines on this Titan. Took a few photos. You know, they say the SSMEs are the best engines in the world, but Marty, I wondered, you know, about these engines. I'm going to look into them a little more. They were hypergolics, which means two liquids that blew up in the chamber there. Going to look a little more into that, but launched in 1966, 57 years ago today, was Commander Jim Lovell and pilot spacewalker Buzz Aldrin. Is that you up there, Buzz? It might be. This was the last of the 10 two-man Gemini flights that set the stage for the Apollo moon landings. An afternoon launch, 4:46 on November 11th, that's tomorrow. Lovell, who's now age 95 and the oldest living astronaut after his best friend, Frank Borman, passed away yesterday. He was a veteran of the 14-day Gemini 7 mission with, of course, his buddy Borman. And he took up to space with him a rookie named Buzz Aldrin, who is 93 years old. And they chased down an Agena rocket in 90 minutes, which was a direct ascent. The 4-day mission had the goals of perfecting the moon suit. How many pictures have I got of that in there? Oh, there we go. We got the guys right there. There they are, Frank Borman, of course, Lovell on the right, Aldrin on the left. So I said, how many years ago? 57 years ago. So they were, I can't subtract like that. They're in their late 30s, Marty, in those pictures there. It closed the chapter on the missions, but what they really needed to perfect was the spacewalks because they become exerting, overworking the astronaut physically, respiratory, heart rates. And Buzz Aldrin said, "Hey, let's practice this like a skin diver in a big pool." And that's what they did. And though they'd done it some, I think this was the concrete time where they really established the training for spacewalks underwater. And Buzz was the one that helped perfect that. And then he did a spacewalk. And there is Buzz on the first selfie. He turned the Hasselblad camera around and took it of himself there with some equipment there in the front. I think that's very interesting. Marty's blown it up there. That's who you are there, Buzz Aldrin, up there. And then, of course, Buzz is known for having all the images on the moon, but two because, of course, Armstrong had the camera. After this mission, NASA moved to the three-man Apollo project, and of course, Lovell and Buzz went with them. They played important roles. Of course, Aldrin was the pilot of the Apollo 11 historic moon landing, and Lovell orbited the moon on Apollo 8 with, of course, his buddy that just passed away, Borman, and Bill Anders. And then he was the commander of the ill-fated Apollo 13. But a great mission. That's not a selfie. That's a picture that Lovell took. Great picture there. I love that picture. That is one of the greatest pictures of the space age right there. And we honor all of our Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo astronauts in our famous Spaceview Park, just 3 blocks away from our Stay Curious studios here in downtown Titusville. There you see the paver on the floor, the iconic 2 for the Roman numerals of the Gemini program, and that celebrates the Roman brothers in mythology. The VAB, you can actually see it. It's real tiny between those poles there in the back of the horizon. We uniquely have astronaut handprints in bronze out there. These are after they've been repaired last summer and repainted so that they could endure the sea air. And you get close to them, and the only place in the world you can put your handprints on Jim Lovell's. This was a project that was mostly done by our godfather of our museum, Charlie Mars. Talked to Charlie the other day. He's doing well at age 87, but he would smash the astronauts' handprints in a clay mold, and then they had a bronze mold made out of them. And there's Buzz's on there. And then we have both these astronauts were recast. The same handprints are out at the Apollo Monument. So we're very proud of this and hope that you come and put your hands on the buzzer there. But let's go away from Apollo 12 and let's go to what was probably never even thought of in the Apollo days. Well, it was a reusable spacecraft. But this is Tom Usiak. Thank you for this beautiful picture of Space Shuttle Columbia on its 5th flight in 1982 on November 11th. This historic flight carried a crew of 4. We'll show them here in a minute, but I just wanted to bathe a little bit in that beautiful sunset, I believe, on the orbiter Columbia that had already been to space 3 times. And Tom Usiak took this photo, and we used this photo at our Shuttle Fest 1 on all of our publicity there. And that's a picture to be proud of. And as is this liftoff at 7:19 a.m. on November 11th, that is today in 1982, 41 years ago. Vance Brand, who's age 92. There's Vance in the foreground. Was the commander. Of course, if his name sounds familiar, he was on the Apollo-Soyuz test project with Deke Slayton and the general, Tom Stafford. So he's also a friend of the American Space Museum, and he also commanded STS-41B in 1994 and 35 in 1990. So would love to see him. He's getting pretty long in the tooth, so that might not happen for a while. But if it does, we'll try to talk to him on Stay Curious. Bob Overmeyer is the crew cut gentleman there. He had 2 space flights and died tragically, I think, in a plane crash. Joe Allen, who's 86 years old, he is in the last one there. Bill Lenore is deceased, his only space flight. Wow. You got 2 of them have passed away. Joe Allen, a friend of his, called me to see if we could try to effort Joe Allen, Marty, on Stay Curious. He'd heard about us, but I do know that Joe, I think, is in an assisted living home there. So this was the first scheduled spacewalk that of the mission that Joe Allen and Lenore were supposed to do, and it was canceled due to a malfunction in the spacesuit. And they were to test the spacesuits. The suits were developed as cheaper and less complicated to the Apollo ones, but a poorly functioning oxygen regulator in Lenore's suit and a broken circulation fan in Allen's caused them to cancel it entirely. And this is the first time in history, ever then or ever since, that an EVA had been canceled due to spacesuit issues. Well, so they launched a couple satellites in the payload bay, and they one there. Let me grab my notes here real quick. Fell on the floor. And I was trying to get the info on those payloads there. But that was what the shuttle was going to do. It demonstrated that it could be a truck, take space up there. So they called themselves Ace Moving Company. We deliver satellite deployment by them. So it was a monumental, mission there as far as that, but bittersweet because they couldn't do the EVA. So thank you for helping us share that. Tom Usiak in Pennsylvania, one of our rocket photographers with his brother Mark, and Carlton Bailey that we love featuring on our program here. Well, let's go to something that is a little more, I threw another patriotic thing in there, Marty, with our beautiful eagle and the American flag. What is more patriotic than a launch control room or a launch control panels like we have here at the American Space Museum? I mean, fly the red, white, and blue there. This panel's actually fueled the space shuttle. But here's the real thing. There, looking at the central nerve system of where our shuttles were flown. I believe that's Mike Lineback shaking the hands of Charlie Bolden. Doesn't it look like, Marty?
Yeah, it does.
And this is where last Saturday, many of you took a tour there. And I've got to call our good friend in Georgia there. I didn't get a chance to call you back, but I will, Gary, here. And I'm going to show pictures that he sent to us on Monday. We're so covered up with our events, it's really something else. But there's today's modern control room. It says America everywhere. We're launching rockets from our space coast here. Hopefully get it up and running a little more than once every year and a half, but nonetheless, we got an exciting mission that's going to launch on December 7th. The Air Force has announced that they're going to launch their 37B, X-37B space plane, which we talked about last week because the last time it was in orbit, there's two of them. The last time one of them orbited was for over 700 days. I'm going to tell you exactly in a minute here. And it landed on November 12th. 2022. And those are some notes I thought I had there. The X-37B was cloaked in secrecy. There's the fairing of the Falcon Heavy that's going to launch it. They haven't given a time. On Thursday, December 7th, a Falcon Heavy rocket will put the 7th mission of the U.S. Air Force's reusable space plane in orbit for nobody knows how long. They have two of them. That's a little misleading because they've both flown twice. They both have flown 3 times, so this would be the 7th. One of them is going to be flown for the 4th. He will conduct a wide. There it is in the fairing. Okay, this would have fit in the space shuttle bay. All right, and we know that the X-40 that our friend Ken Verderami was a Air Force colonel in charge of that project of X-40 with Pam Melroy and astronaut Rick Husband. It was developed for this here. And you look on the bottom as they're putting it in the fairing. See at the very bottom, Marty, it has a service module adapter on the bottom. Yeah, go ahead and point it there if you can. You're not going to see this part on the landing. So it has some extra service module stuff attached to the bottom. When it goes into space, you can see the patina of this one landing. As I believe that we are looking, of course, we are looking at the payload doors where they would open. This is, the Defense Department is getting more open for this. They have been up for over 770 days. They took them up in increments of a half a year, then a year, so what they're doing up there is top secret business. There is a Falcon 9 Heavy. Carlton Bailey, thinking of you today. We'll be seeing another one of those December 7th, a Thursday. They haven't launched the time, but usually they would not even let you know this was going to go out until you saw the rocket roll up on the pad. And this is what an artist rendering of what it looks like in space. Okay, notice it's got an extra trunk on it in the back there. And this is the way it looks when it lands at night. So many of the experiments on board are also things like seeds that they're putting up because these are staying up in space. The last one stayed up for 2 years, all right? So they can put a lot of materials on there to test to see how long things can endure in radiation, which is a big deal to understand going to Mars. So, and can we take seeds up there to grow, or will radiation stop them from germinating? That type of stuff. So there's more than spy versus spy going on, and you can see the recovery landing crew in their scape suits. All right. So that they're not exposed to any harmful gases that are emitting out of that. So, all right. Well, let's move on from what's going to happen in the future to this wonderful man of our past, Mr. Frank Borman, born in Gary, Indiana, passed away at age 95. Here he is, happy in his senior years at one of the displays somewhere at a museum, like we have him photographed in front of here. Marty, I didn't really bring a lot of notes with me to talk about Frank Borman. He's one of everyone can read his bios. We talked about Collect Space has got a good bio on him there. There's been no announcement of services for him, but just think of the things he autographed for people. There is the lunar chart from Apollo 8. That would be a cool thing to write. And I don't know if he took, it looks like his handwriting that he wrote there, maybe what he said as they were orbiting the moon on Christmas Eve, 1968. There. Marty, did you ever have a chance to meet Frank Borman, or did you ever bought any of his autographs or any of his swag?
I've never met him, but I do have a couple of autographs.
Yeah, I think I've got one, but we will have an auction in December, and that will be we'll be promoting those if you have it in there, as well as Tom Mattingly, who passed away. But there he is with that. What a cool thing to sign. And then I alluded to earlier that this man signed one of the most famous rock and roll albums of all time. Anybody guess what that is, Marty? Or comment on that? No.
No.
I should have asked them to guess up there. Led Zeppelin II. All right. And why did he autograph this? And he was happy. Well, it doesn't look like he's happy to autograph it, but I'm sure he was. One of the seminal rock and roll albums. I think that was been 1968, maybe 69. It's probably 69 because they thought that the astronaut with the cap on there was Neil Armstrong, and that's Robert Plant, the singer. John Paul Jones on the right, Jimmy Page is in the lower left there. That's John Bonham on the right. Jimmy Page is in the lower left. John Paul Jones, bass player, right there below Frank Borman, who proudly signed that. And you can go and research this, and you see that they took his Army aviation photo of his group and photoshopped the band members in there on Led Zeppelin II. So a whole lot of love there for Frank Borman today, and the cool owner of that, man, that would love that. So important was the Apollo 8 mission that Frank Borman was commander of, that we had such tragedies in 1968 where presidential candidate Robert Kennedy was murdered, and Martin Luther King was murdered in 1968, civil rights leader, and it was just horrible. And I'm a teenager, and us teenage boys, Marty, were really thinking, what are they going to do? Just kill people that don't agree with them? I mean, it's really how we thought about it. I can remember as a young boy just kind of, playing war or whatever as a 13, 14-year-old teenager and looking at buildings, wondering if someone was going to kill you because they'd already murdered President Kennedy. So these people, these three astronauts were given the Time magazine prestigious Men of the Year. And the words that, yes, Marty, you were going to say something.
Yeah, in 1968, we also had race riots and civil riots. I'm sorry, race riots and anti-Vietnam War riots.
Absolutely. And a riot at the Democratic National Convention, burning buildings down and so forth. some things don't change. 50, 60 years later, some of these same issues were going on. And these men, the word that was out at the end of 1968 was Apollo 8 saved the year. They saved the year. And it was really an amazing year. You look at some positive things. I mean, the Vietnam War was cranking up so badly. Marty's right. The civil rights movement, and then they killed Martin Luther King. The music in 1968, a lot of the hippie music of the time, the heavy drug influenced movie of the time, but a lot of beautiful music too. Some of the great artists like the Rolling Stones and Beatles and so forth. A lot of great songs out of that era. And here these guys pulled it all together for us on December 24th, 1968, orbiting the moon and reading out of the book of Genesis. I'll never forget it. The landscape going below you there. Well, there are the two buddies. I'm sure Jim Lovell is feeling very morose today, losing his longtime friend. How can you have somebody that you started to be an astronaut with, okay, in 1960, when they were chosen in 62, 63. They literally knew each other, 70 years of each other's lives, flew together. This is them coming out of the capsule after spending 14 days in a Gemini space capsule, all right, to test man's endurance. That's why they kind of have some more comfortable looking spacesuits there. I think Frank was the one that quipped that we got engaged while we were up there. One of them did. Marty, I know you and I couldn't spend 14 days together each other. You might be able to tolerate, I might be able to tolerate you more than me, but anybody, just think about that. No matter how much you love or care about somebody, the vehicle you're going home in tonight from work or going to around tomorrow to enjoy Veterans Day celebrations, just think about that person beside you that you can't leave that front seat for 14 days. And you have to go to the bathroom, you have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to keep a spaceship orbiting the Earth, for God's sakes. So I really have high regard for these two men. And it will be very sad when Mr. Lovell passes, because he is more iconically thought about in Apollo 13. But I'm going to tell you, this was a hell of a mission for these two men right here. Hope Cynthia Rossi thinks so there. In fact, there they are a few years ago. Look at this picture. And there they are in their 90s at some air event. Of course, they flew till the bitter end. So they would always be at air shows and things like that. And I just love the contrast between this, Marty. Friends for life. I get emotional thinking about how cool this is for these two men and their families to have known each other all this long time, and what they've done for America in the space program. So God bless you, Frank Borman, and we hope the tributes keep pouring in from your friends. And again, the American Space Museum holds your family dear to our hearts as they grieve a wonderful man who lived 95 years on this planet. Same age as John Glenn, Marty, I believe, lived to 98. So Tom Celentano, hope you enjoy this tribute as we wave the red, white, and blue here for everybody. And thank you, veterans. Bill Whiting will be at the helping us tomorrow at the memorabilia show. Tom Thumb, thumbs up to you, Tom, huh? And Tom Usiak, I'll give you a thumb up, Tom Usiak. We figured out who you are. You are Buzz Aldrin, and you're 93 years old now. Carlton Bailey, appreciate you, CB. You'll be out there tomorrow. Gary Gerald, I'll give you a call here in a minute, Gary. Steve J, thank you. We're going to announce your Galaxy of Giving on Monday. Dave Stangy's up in Michigan, and they're playing Penn State, I believe. This could be maybe Guy Bluford will be to put Penn State on there. So somebody put this on my hat, Marty. It says, throw this away. No. Did Hazel put that on there? Throw this away. I'm going out with the Buckeyes today, buddy, as we're going to beat you, Bill Whiting and Michigan State. I'm sorry that we're playing you this week. And Doug Forrest, thank you, buddy. We can't wait to see some of your new artwork. So like we said, everybody, we hope that you enjoy Veterans Day weekend. Keep the Borman family in your thoughts and prayers, and all of our astronauts. We've got so many of them in their late 80s and 90s. This is going to be a common thread, but lives well lived. The veterans and our astronauts. Look how they've changed America. So, with that, I'm going to say thank you, everybody, for a great week. Let's stay curious. We appreciate everybody's input. We're always looking to improve the program, and we're going to think of new ways to do that. And we will talk more about how to get your tax-deductible money next week on our Galaxy of Giving campaign. Until then, I'm Marquette saying peace to all you veterans out there, and God bless America.